everyone, my name is Xenia, and this month AEW had its first ever international show, or two shows if I'm more precise. So yeah guys, today we're talking about the importance of AEW finally transcending the borders, transcending the American wrestling scene, so to speak. On the 13th of October, AEW had its first ever international show, Dynamite, in Toronto, Canada. And I just want to get into this phenomenon a little bit and how it's important to the face of the modern professional wrestling. So obviously I talk about AEW a lot on the channel as the first and probably only, I say probably for specific reasons, and probably only viable competitor to WWE in the modern American wrestling market. I say probably because a lot of people like to bring up WCW, but to me that was a whole different thing that ended in a whole different way, that I really do not see the WWE versus AEW rivalry ending. And I also look at this on the horizon of quote-unquote modern professional wrestling, which obviously is a very, very flexible term, but the way I see it, WCW is not really comparable to AEW in this regard. And I had to make this side note because when I say that AEW is the first viable competitor of WWE that had an international show, I do have to leave WCW out of this discourse because WCW, of course, had international shows. But in this time frame, in this realm, AEW is the first viable competitor of WWE that had an international show. Why is that important? Because it puts wrestling on an international scene, which you could argue that AEW was already there because their shows are easily accessible through Fight. Their shows are also on UK television, which I recently had a chance to confirm, by the way, when I went to England, watched Dynamite on British TV, which is great. However, it's a whole different story when it's an actual physical encounter with wrestling. You could also argue that, again, wrestling exists perfectly fine in other countries, especially obviously Canada. Canada is a cradle of wrestling in the world. It's on the world map. However, nothing really compares to WWE or AEW anywhere in the world, in a sense that it has such a global outreach and such a global influence. Because obviously there are other promotions in different countries that are very significant to those countries and that are scale-wise comparable to AEW. I would definitely say that New Japan Pro Wrestling is scale-wise comparable to AEW. However, reach-wise, you cannot even make that comparison. And another important thing is New Japan doesn't even try to exude the same influence, the same reach as AEW is. Or of course, obviously there's AAA in Mexico, which again, I feel like it's a very specific kind of wrestling that again is not trying to be WWE, it's not trying to be AEW. So this is definitely a huge milestone for AEW, and WWE should definitely take note because it is meaningful to the development of the company. We see how WWE is really trying to have this global outreach. WWE has been paying a lot of attention to its Asian markets, to India specifically, to its obviously European, British, English market, because obviously we just recently had the Clash at the Castle show, and again, Canada has been a huge factor in history of WWE. A lot of historic events, historic things for WWE happened in Canada. So Canada is definitely a familiar ground for larger scale televised wrestling. And AEW, Tony Khan obviously know that. So Canada is an amazing decision as for the first step to transcend the borders of the United States. First of all, it might be the easiest option logistically. There's just not that much distance, not that much traveling going into it. And second of all, as I said, a very wrestling savvy, wrestling loving crowd, which is also super important. I always talk about how the crowd is a part of the show in wrestling, and it's super important for the crowd to be into it to make an impression of a successful show. And that segues me into another thing that I really wanted to bring up. I saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter, which I'm not trying to take credit for it as an original one-of-a-kind thought, but I do think it's very curious and should be talked about. A lot of people noticed how the international crowd reacts to the acts in a similar way that an American crowd would. Usually when you do a show in a drastically different location, it's a bit of a bizarre world type of thing. That's why WrestleMania week crowds are so strange and different and cheer for unexpected people or unexpected acts. Or that's why when you do a UK show, all the face-heel dynamics go out the window because people just want to cheer for their local wrestlers. However, with AEW, we barely saw that. Maybe in the Jericho versus Danielson match, where the crowd really went behind Jericho during the match, which wasn't really noticeable during the entrances that much. And of course the hometown pop for Sean Spears, which again, it wasn't anything that would make you go like, oh, what's happening? Like you have with, say, MJF in New York. So the only logical takeaway from this would be AEW is doing something right booking-wise, which does not come as a surprise to a lot of people since Tony Khan has been awarded the Booker of the Year title, rightfully so. A lot of people like to argue though, so I do feel like it's important to get into this. I feel like one thing AEW does that's very different from WWE, at least Vince WWE, we've still yet to see what Triple H does with it. AEW doesn't resist crowds. AEW doesn't resist fan reactions. AEW a lot of the times does tend to go with what's natural, with what's organic, what's organically over. And this particular show was very much leaning into it. We saw FTR, we saw The Acclaimed, we saw Nyla Rose, who, by the way, people might not think of when you think organically over, when you think crowd pops, but she's a fan favorite on the internet. And as we've noticed with, again, The Acclaimed specifically, the internet fame does very much translate to live crowds, does very much translate inside the ring. We saw Swerve, who's been getting a very organic heel reaction, which is again great for him. And we saw Moxley. So AEW is feeding into what the crowd is receiving well. So this is pretty much what you get when you don't try to upset your viewer, when you don't go against the grain, when you don't go against what's organic. You get a crowd that actually follows your lead. You get a crowd that actually enjoys what they're being fed. You get a crowd that reacts in the way that's beneficial to you. So huge props to Tony Khan for that. You guys know that I'm not a fan of super detailed reviews, but I do want to go match by match and share my thoughts on the card a little bit. So the show started with the debut of Renee Paquette, which again, a lot of people might say that it was just a question of time when she would debut, which I would agree with. Her husband is in the company. We were announced the Canada shows. She's Canadian. It's a hometown favorite type of thing. And she took a decent break from WWE, from wrestling. She had a baby. The baby has grown a little bit. So, you know, it's about time, which still, I don't necessarily agree with Tony Khan announcing her prior to the show. I would prefer a surprise, as a lot of wrestling fans do. But again, I do get why Tony Khan tends to announce things like that, or sometimes not even announce them, but heavily imply them. When we saw CM Punk's debut, when we saw Bryan Danielson's debut, it was heavily implied. People were flying in to see CM Punk. And again, CM Punk we saw. And I do get why this happens, because for TV networks that broadcast the shows, they want the draw. They want people to already be there. Because it's cool if a surprise debut happens and a whole bunch of people go like, oh wow, I wasn't watching because I didn't think it would happen. I went back and watched, or I went back and watched illegally, or I went back and watched it on YouTube and now it garnered so many views on YouTube. But for TV networks, it's important that butts are in seats and that the viewer is in front of the TV in the moment. So I get why that happened. But again, really cool. Great for Renee. Happy to see her in AEW. She's doing great. We got Luchasaurus versus Jungle Boy as the opener. If you didn't realize it by now, there's gonna be spoilers. So if you haven't watched, go back and watch, then come back, finish this video, don't just click away. Also subscribe while you're at it. So we got Luchasaurus versus Jungle Boy. Luchasaurus won that match, which was a bit unexpected, if I'm honest, because Jungle Boy has been built as this like new, fresh, homegrown babyface, which has been going great for him. And again, side note, AEW is specifically good with baby faces, which is unusual for a wrestling company. People like to say that baby faces don't exist in 2022, that baby faces are boring, that no one wants to cheer for them. AEW is doing great with baby faces. We have Jungle Boy, who is very gritty in a way, who is not your classical, sweet, nice face. That makes him relatable because there's a struggle, there's a certain circumstantial feel of righteousness, of him seeking justice in a way, so that's great. We also obviously have the anxious millennial cowboy, Hangman Page, who again is very relatable for a lot of different reasons, maybe at times too relatable, but that's a topic for another video. We have Jon Moxley, we have Wardlow, who is extremely over as a somewhat classic powerhouse babyface, which is a phenomenon in itself. So yeah, AEW does great with babyfaces. I would be honest with you, I've been loving Christian Cage in this whole feud. He's doing amazing, possibly my favorite work of his throughout his entire career. That's gonna make people mad, but it's true for me. I did expect a repackage for Jungle Boy. Wait, no, let me phrase it differently. I have been expecting a repackage for Jungle Boy. I feel like it's long overdue. They've been gradually calling him Jack Perry instead of Jungle Boy, which is great, a great name with history and fits him amazingly, which is unusual for a real true name. And I just feel like it's time, man. Like, ditch the Jungle Boy shtick. Maybe that loss will actually trigger the repackage, which I'm hoping for, but I just feel like they gotta pull the trigger. Then we got Factory versus Wardrow. Wardrow is one of those tag teams where you didn't know you needed it until it happened. It's fun, it's a bit of a fan servicey type of thing, it's cool to watch. Obviously a squash build up for Wardrow versus Embassy. Cool, we all get it. Then we also got an FTR appearance, and then the subsequent return of Shawn Spears. Great hometown pop. Needed that for any international show. Also great for Shawn Spears, and he did cut a promo after it went off air. If you didn't see it, go watch it. It's on the internet, on YouTube, on Twitter, and it was a very good, vulnerable, real speech promo. And having heard that, it's even better to see him back. It's even nicer to see him get such a cool reaction. A bit of an inexplicable face turn, especially aligning with Wardlow. A little strange, because before he took his break, the kayfabe relationship with Wardlow was strained, to say the least. So it is a little strange to me that he comes back into it and like straight into being besties with Wardlow again. But you know, it's a feel-good moment. Sometimes things should be more so feel-good than logical in wrestling. I firmly believe in that. So good moment. Then we had Swerve versus the daddy ass Billy Gunn. Again, the claim with Billy Gunn, probably the most over act in AEW right now. The Toronto crowd really deserved it. They had a great reaction. Always great signs in the crowd when the acclaimed is in the ring. All the scissors are so creative, it's amazing, and you love to see it. I feel like almost everyone just loves it. Like, there's little to no reasons to, you know, be upset about it if you're not like Jim Cornette or something like that. So what I'm saying is, it's all cool unless you hate fun. Billy Gunn lost, which again, he can lose in this position with barely any effect on his booking or him being over or the crowd reception whatsoever, so good for him. Good to build Swerve as, again, the strong heel. Love that. No notes. Then we got the Moxley and Hangman promo. A little strange that I don't feel like Hangman was being received that positively. I definitely heard some boos. The crowd was definitely behind Moxley. Good promo. Everyone loved it, but again, I do feel like the more we get those typical promos from Hangman, the more it feels like, I'm gonna sound so mean, the more it feels like he's trying a bit too hard. He's trying a bit too hard to be this relatable character. I posted on Twitter that Hangman's promos are kind of like Jennifer Lawrence interviews in the mid-2010s, where it's like, oh, pizza, oh, I like to eat, I'm not like other girls, I smell. It's a lot of that. It's the whole shtick of, oh, I've got anxiety, the pills are not working. Like, for me, it's getting a little showy. For me, it's getting a little tired. A lot of people Loved the promo. I saw a lot of amazingly good feedback. I saw a lot of people saying that it was his best promo. I don't necessarily agree with it. I thought it was good, but as I said, it's just a bit much of all that for me. Like maybe give it a break, maybe try something different for a bit. Then we obviously had Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho for the ROH Championship. Chris Jericho did not use Judas, which I think was specifically so that the crowd doesn't like him, but he still got the hometown reaction, he still got all the support, which, you know, all power to him. He's a hometown hero. He's probably one of the most, if not the most, iconic Canadian wrestlers that there are or ever were in the industry, so it's only fair. And what's even more important that happened in that match, that Jericho won because of that moment, is that Daniel Garcia is aligning himself with JAS again, which I was gonna say was to be expected, but maybe not really by everyone. We did want this feel-good story of Daniel Garcia aligning himself with his childhood hero, with Bryan Danielson, realizing that he's a true professional wrestler, following his boyhood dream, but womp womp, oh well. Daniel Garcia, I feel like, is such a natural heel. Like, people love him. Like, sometimes someone is such a good heel that you just love them. You love to hate them, and he just has this presentation about him that I feel like they need to work more with the heel persona. It's too early to leave it alone just now, in my personal opinion. We got, again, as I said, Nyla Rose, a bit of a segment. Nyla Rose stole the TBS championship, which I think is a super fun way to go with it, because there's really no way that they could have Jade lose it cleanly just yet, so Nyla stealing it is a great way out of it, but to also switch the focus a little bit without undermining Jade in any way. So again, smart decision. Good job, Tony Khan. Then we got the women's tag match. Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida and Toni Storm. Great match, by the way. Possibly one of my favorites of the night. Jamie Hayter has been so loved, has been so well received organically, and I've been saying it, if AEW doesn't turn her face, she's gonna turn herself face. And no one's gonna like that. That's back to the point about not resisting the fans. I really want to see the Hayter/Britt Baker program. We deserve it. Give it to us. Also in this match, Hikaru Shida got the pin, which I feel is great, because I've been talking about how AEW hasn't really been treating their ex-women's champions as important acts. Like, I know Riho is not in America right now, but even when she was, like, who even remembers that Riho was champion anymore? Like, she doesn't get the ex-champion treatment. Neither does Nyla. I've been saying that we gotta put some respect on Nyla Rose's name, because this is just unacceptable, the way that AEW just completely erases it. The same thing with Hikaru Shida, I feel, because after she lost the title, she had so many losses, she was on Dark all the time, and it just really didn't feel like the way to treat your former champion. So in this whole storyline with Toni Storm, I feel like Hikaru Shida is finally regaining some of that importance. And finally, we have the main event. Oh my god, that was my most anticipated match for ages now. We got, yet again, Orange Cassidy versus Pac. I don't think I've ever seen Pac in a bad match at all, and you guys know that I'm a big best friends enjoyer, so obviously I was rooting for Orange Cassidy. I was rooting for him to get the AEW title all the way back, but, you know, I don't think that was viably happening. But in this here match, we all knew, I think, we all had a feeling that Orange has got to win this one, and it was an amazing match. I've been saying that Orange Cassidy does not get enough credit for his incredible in-ring psychology, for his incredible timing. I just feel like a lot of the times when someone labels themselves or is labeled by the viewer as a comedy wrestler, a lot of the times people just brush them off and don't really give them credit for how good they are in ring, even when they really, really are. And I feel like that's the same curse, pun intended, of Danhausen, because if you saw him before AEW, if you've seen his matches outside of AEW, he's a very, very good wrestler. But in AEW, he just barely wrestles at all. So you know, I do see how being a big character is enough to get over, especially in modern wrestling. You don't really even have to wrestle that much. But it's just a shame when someone is a really, really good in-ring talent and it doesn't get showcased or it gets overlooked just because they're a big character. I feel like it's a mindset that we collectively should release. And with the in-ring psychology, Orange Cassidy again did great work in this match. We really see him going through this journey of, oh, I don't care, then it's like, oh, I actually care about this match, I'm gonna try. And then I feel like this match was the epitome of not even I'm gonna try, but oh, I actually care, because this is personal now, this involves my friends, this involves my support system, and I don't think I've ever seen Orange Cassidy so fired up, so emotional in a match, and in this particular context it worked so well. Orange Cassidy's first title win in AEW. Great moment, great celebration with the orange confetti. I just loved it. I just loved it to pieces. Obviously, we also had the Rampage in Toronto. Also some great moments. Stu Grayson is back, which not sure why, not sure how that worked out, but I feel like it was again a great feel-good moment for the Canadian crowd, and I personally am very happy to see him back. I just feel like Dark Order just hasn't really been the same without him, and Dark Order has gone through so many tumultuous twists and turns throughout this past couple of years, I feel, at this point, and I just feel like Stu Grayson is an integral part of Dark Order, and they're just going to be better off with him on board. We got a Dalton Castle versus Jericho match set up, which is again amazing. I'm all for showcasing less seen but amazing talent. I feel like Dalton Castle is just a born entertainer. He's so good, so great. I feel like it's only right for Tony Khan to make him like one of the faces of the ROH brand, which I feel like that's exactly what's happening right now, so this is great to see. We also got the Kingdom debut, Matt Taven and the Bennetts, which made a lot of people mad for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. If there's something I should know and I don't, comment down below, because I'm really not sure what make you mad about that. Someone said on Twitter that like a lot of people are mad that the Bennetts exist. Like that's the reaction that I'm getting from this. I enjoy the Bennetts a lot. I haven't seen that much of Matt Taven, but you know, why not add another strong faction into the mix? Also, people have been mentioning that officially they're still Impact champions, which not sure how that works, but as we know, Impact is pre-taped, and I guess not everything can revolve around pre-taped content, fortunately or unfortunately, but I feel like it was a great way to, you know, cap the show. And the Rampage definitely had you will regret you didn't come card. I know that during wrestling weekends a lot of people tend to skip Rampage if it's a live Rampage or if it's just a standalone Rampage taping because it feels less important than Dynamite, and I feel like in a sense it is. Obviously it's shorter, it's pre-taped, yada yada, you know it, but they definitely put on a great Rampage card that I wouldn't want to miss if I were there. I was supposed to be there. Full disclosure, this is what's happening. I was supposed to be there. I couldn't make it, so I did send cameraman, so all the beautiful footage that you're seeing right now is, you know, that it belongs to us, it belongs to XDT, so I'm glad I could still cover the show for you guys even though I wasn't physically present there. Write a comment, let me know how you felt about the show, or especially if you were there, write a comment, tell me how it was. And in the meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. Give this video a like if you had a good time. Subscribe, tap the notification bell to never miss an upload. And until next time, goodbye.